What's up, everybody? It's Tanner with Built Not Bought, and today I'm going to show you how to unbox, assemble, and give my initial thoughts on the Laguna dust collector.
I'm freezing, guys. It is 52 below Fahrenheit wind chill temps right now. The truck driver helped me get this into the wood shop. It's a new dust collector. I'm gonna warm up and then we're gonna unbox that thing, put it right to work. All right, it's a few days later, like a week later, and I'm finally to a weekend where I'm not super busy. I'm working on that cool cherry table. If you haven't checked out that video, it's a cool one with the curved bench. Anyways, back to this. We've got our Laguna dust collector. From what I understand, this is one heck of a process assembling this. So I'm hoping that I can get it done this afternoon. I've read it can take 5 to 8 hours depending on your workspace, if you have a helping hand, tools, etc. We're hoping we can cut that down, but time will tell. I'm going to just off camera take everything off of this pallet and kind of lay it out on the floor or on a table, and then we're going to start going step by step assembling this bad boy.
So, right out of the gates, I want to give a positive note on this dust collector. It was packaged quite well. Everything was secured and everything kind of had its own little place, and they figured out a way to piece this into that crate perfectly, like a Tetris puzzle. So I do give them props for that. Nothing was damaged. The negative is how many pieces there are to this. Unboxing it took a little bit of time. Some of it was pre-assembled, like this unit right here. And the very first step in the assembly process is flipping that motor upside down into that foam piece you see behind me. Make sure you do this. Keep that foam. It comes in handy. And then putting these caster wheels on. These caster wheels are found in labeled packages, which is kind of nice that they label everything for you. But I do want to note those side pieces that say Laguna on them, those need to come all the way off of this, and then the locking caster wheels go on the left side and the regular go on the right side. I didn't realize I needed to remove these smaller portions until later on. So here I'm actually tightening them down, but you actually have to replace them with the longer pieces that look identical to that. And then you put the shorter piece on top of those. Next, I'm grabbing the canister and the Cyclone. And then there's a foam tape that comes with it. And you're going to put the foam tape on every seam of this build. And that foam tape is going to give you almost an airtight gap so that you don't have dust flying out of the machine. And you're going to find the hardware for that in the Cyclone package. So here you can kind of see that foam on there, and you're going to squeeze that foam together as you're tightening all of this down. A helping hand here, or a little tip, is to grab a quick grip clamp and squeeze it down, because that foam is just thick enough where it's hard to get the nut started on the bolt, but when you can squeeze it down a little bit, it gives you a little bit of extra thread to work with, and that helped me out tremendously. Once I've got all of that cinched down tight, I'm using my impact here. This is a game changer for this build. Get yourself a 3/8 impact or something equivalent so you don't have to wrench these all by hand, or you're going to be here for days. Here I'm going back, removing those pieces fully and replacing them with the longer pieces. Now these are all labeled with triangles, and the triangle I'm working on right now is the two triangular piece that's going to go on the right side of this build. And on the bottom, there's going to be wider holes. And then on the top, there's two posts that are threaded. You see those right there. And there's those two triangles I was telling you about. So triangle number one is going straight ahead. To the right is 2, and to the left is 3. Next, you're going to take the smaller panel that was already pre-installed when it's shipped, and you're going to place that on the top of this panel here with 2 flat washers and 2 bolts, just like this here.
All right, we're an hour in, and this is what we've got done so far. A couple of complaints that I'm going to just start out with right out of the gates is, why wouldn't you make this just one piece instead of having it 2 pieces for starters? It just seems like it would make way more sense and it would be stronger. And the fact that these were bolted to the frame out of the crate and you had to remove those and then put these ones on and then put these ones back on top of it, it just doesn't really I mean, I'm sure it was all for shipping purposes, but charge an extra $50 and make this half of what it needed to be, right? If that's one piece, and you just bolt it right on, piece of cake. But I digress. I'm trying to not lose my cool. It's been putsy so far. The instructions are terrible, so I hope that this video helps you guys assemble this much better than having to read through the instructions. And if so, please like and subscribe and comment down below, because the whole reason I do these videos is to help people get out of situations like assembling stuff with crappy instructions, because that's one of my biggest pet peeves. So anyways, enough complaining, back to work. I'm still excited about this. I also think I underestimated the size of it. Holy cow. It's going to be almost double, I would say, the footprint of my previous one. So yeah, let's keep on going.
Up next, we're going to reinforce that seam with a bracket that covers both of them with 4 holes for 4 flat washers and 4 bolts. And that just bridges the gap between the two and adds a little bit more stability to that seam.
Here's a close-up of those brackets. And that just holds the seam together better. Still have to do that one and that one.
This is where things start to get extremely difficult if you're going to be doing this by yourself. I highly recommend you find somebody to give you a hand with the process, because this is not really a one-man job. It's heavy and awkward. Anyways, 4 bolts and flat washers are going into each of these panels. Remember when I told you to keep that foam? It's vital that you have that for this step. That way you're not scratching everything up while it's upside down.
All right, so after like a good half hour, 45 minutes of looking in and out of that manual and looking at pictures, this piece right here just doesn't exist in the owner's manual for this one. It's like the assembly for this unit this is like a completely different unit than what is in the actual manual. So I'm hoping that this is a big time saver for you. Find this piece, put the foam tape around the rim. I don't even know if you're supposed to or not. I'm just doing it because I assume that there could be dust coming in and out of here. There's 4 holes in here, and there's 4 holes right here, and it lines up. So that's what I'm going to move forward with. Kind of like drops in.
Quickly went ahead and cinched down all 4 of those bolts, and then it's time to put this main unit on there. I wanted to give a close-up of this foam tape. I just put it on this little folded over piece of metal where that seam is. On all of the pieces, that's where I put the tape, and it seemed to have worked out okay. It seems odd to me that a unit this expensive is reliant on some cheap foam tape like this, but I don't know what else they really could have done. Maybe like a rubber gasket would have been better, but I digress. Let's keep working. With the time lapse, you're not really going to notice how difficult this step was, and this is where 2 people is a must. This is a very heavy piece of equipment, and it has wheels under it. All the weight is at the way top of it, so trying to tip it upright was very difficult, and it was sliding away from me until I used my workbench to prop it up against. With our unit back in the upright position, it's time to work on that canister filter assembly. You're going to take this rod and attach these flappers, and these are used to clean out the little crevices of the air filter. You turn a handle or a crank on the top, and these just kind of flap along those pieces. Make sure that you attach them both on the same side like this one here. There were many discrepancies between the instruction manual and my unit, and this was one of them. On the shaft, you see another spot to put on 2 additional flappers, and in the manual on the shaft, it just shows 1 set of brackets to apply those 2. So it seems like there almost could be or should be 4 flappers, but according to the manual, it's got them both on one side. So that's what I'm going to do with my piece here. The next piece you need to find is this round cap, and I'm going to wrap this in foam tape as well. And this is going to go up on top of the unit and held in place with these Phillips sheet metal screws. Make sure you get the grooves of this piece pointed in the upward direction, kind of the opposite of what you would guess. Right now, it's upside down. It needs to be flipped.
It's going to be impossible for me to film this, but there's 12 screws. Make sure that that lip is going upwards like it is on this one here. All right, so here we are. This is fastened on with 12 of those sheet metal screws. Then you got your gasket piece. These are going to just line up with those screws here. And there's 4 bolts that will go down through that. So I'm gonna do that quick, and then we'll work on installing the actual canister. So now our filter cleaner flapper thing, this chrome end, we're just gonna shove up through that hole, and it's supposed to click lock into place. So it's just dangling there, locked into that little bushing thing. Notice that metal strap, that's gonna be down, this is gonna be up, and it's supposed to attach to this flange right here. It's like the exact same size as the flange. I can't get it on there. This is like in between rubber and plastic is how I would describe it. I'm gonna see if I can find a blowtorch and heat it up, because there's no other way this is gonna slip over there. And then you're supposed to lock it into place with this, but I gotta get a way to heat this up and try and flex it out to get it on there first. This tank is almost empty. I had it from ice fishing and it was too empty to run my heater. So I'm hoping I've got enough propane in here to heat this up a little bit. It's gonna be close. All right, I'm sorry I didn't get this filmed. That was extremely difficult and borderline impossible with one person. It might have been easier if I had a decent blowtorch to heat that up a little bit more evenly, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Just getting that slipped on over there and holding the canister by myself before I could get the band tightened on there, nightmare. Maybe you'll have better luck than me. I hope you do. Anyways, the band right here just has a little bolt that you have to adjust the tension on. I've got it pretty snug. I hope that that sucker stays on there. This is as high as I could get it on this side. I wish it was all the way up to the top. And the next step is to grab the handle that is used to clean the filter, and that just hooks on that silver piece that you see right there. And this handle just slips into that silver piece, and you just fasten it with the bolt and a washer. There's also a washer and a bolt that are gonna go right there, so make sure you get that on there and tightened.
Make sure when you're installing that canister that that rod is through that bracket there, otherwise you're gonna have issues. Pay super close attention here. The instructions are really bad at this point, and I ended up putting this bracket on backwards. The fins of it need to be facing outward, and the smooth side needs to be facing inward. So make sure you orientate them in the opposite direction that you see me doing right now, and this is going to save you a ton of time.
Next up, you're gonna need carriage bolts and this little L-shaped piece. Make sure this lip is in the upward position. One goes on this side and one goes on that side in those little square holes.
Find the 2 spring-loaded L brackets here, and those are going to get bolted down to the bracket you just installed on the side panel. Make sure the square tubing is sitting on the outside of the bottom panel, and that the swinging support arm is on the inside like this here. And then there's a piece of U-channel that's going to cap over the top of that, and you're going to bolt through those and secure it in place. Remember, your bottom panel needs to be flipped the opposite direction that mine is.
I screwed this part up. There's these little brackets here. These need to go on here and then put the nut on. So this will just go through here with those 2 bolts. So I'm gonna back those off and attach this. One on each side. So this is how it's gonna look. Just need to snug this down, but this is out of your way.
Find this plastic spool bushing, and then there's going to be a chamfered flathead hex bolt that is going to go through that plastic bushing and then through that metal bracket. And you're going to need a metric Allen wrench to snug that down tight on each side.
Next, you're going to grab the two big bolts and the lock nuts, and you're going to head over to that swing arm. You're going to lift up the swing arm, attach this through right there. So right here we have that going through the support bracket from down here. Bolt goes through this way, and the locking nut is right here. Tighten those both down. Don't over tighten those. Since they're lock nuts, you don't have to. This should be able to move up and down.
Grab this top piece that is going to cinch down on the canister. There's a little black plastic circle, and that's going to go towards the canister filter away from me right now. This is kind of tricky to get all these bolts and nuts started with only one person, so grab a helping hand here. Do not over tighten them though.
Of course, after I installed all these are just finger tight. You can see the gap there so that it can kind of pivot, but there's this strap piece, or it's a divider, separator, whatever you want to call it. This just needs to go across from one to the other. So I'm going to back a nut out on each side and then fasten that up in there. I guess this helps with separating big chunks from little chunks.
Working on the main dustbin now, you're going to attach the smaller caster wheels to this bottom plate and then assemble the actual canister itself.
Notice that square, that's going to go up. This one's going to go up as well. There's a little lip here, and that's going to go inside of this piece. Kind of interlocks in a way. And then on the inside, there's 12 sheet metal screws, those Phillip head sheet metal screws. Those are going to go down on either side. So I'm going to get one or two started, then I'm going to tip it on its side so I can reach in there a little bit easier.
To my knowledge, this is an improved design from the original, which was like 4 or 5 pieces. I still don't get why they don't just make it one solid piece. You wouldn't have to mess around with sealing up all these air gaps, and it would just be better all around.
Carriage bolts outside, and then a washer and a nut on the inside. When it's in the upright, you're going to see this hooking like this.
You're going to grab some oversized Phillips head bolts and then these acorn nuts to install the handle onto the canister.
This is kind of annoying because you've got these nuts that are supposed to go and attach from the backside. So the screw goes in the canister onto here, and then you're supposed to be able to tighten this down. And this would make sense, right? I've seen this style before. If the cutout in here was a hexagon so that it would hold it in place, it's just round, so it just free spins. So how do you get something on here to snug it up? There's not enough room to get a socket in there. So you just kind of press it with your hand and get it a little bit tight, but I worry that's just gonna work its way loose over time. So maybe Loctite those would be a good idea. I'm gonna go try and find some quick. Came with a tube of silicone. I ran a bead around the perimeter of this, pretty much right over the top of where those screw holes are. And then you're gonna use the sheet metal screws to go up through the bottom of this into here. So the pointy side of the screw will be inside of the bin.
After seeing and learning more about how this all is constructed, I would recommend using much more silicone at this point because you don't want any gaps anywhere on the bottom of this canister or dust is just going to go flying out of it. I forgot to do this next step, but there's a bag of small rubber caps that are going to go on the pointy side of those sheet metal screws that are holding that bottom in place, and those are going to prevent the bag from getting snagged or from injury occurring. You also need to silicone the entire inside perimeter, both of the side seams where that canister comes together, and the top. Make sure that any of those air gaps or cuts or holes in that metal are completely sealed up. There's a rubber gasket that just clicks into the inside of this canister and you just trim it with a side cutter so that it's nice and flush. This installs pretty easily. This next step is a insert that goes inside the canister and it holds your bag down from getting sucked up into the Cyclone. I found out that I'm not even going to need the bag or this canister the way I plan on using it because I can just dump my sawdust outside my shop and burn it. But if you do need to bag your sawdust and throw it in a dumpster or whatever else, this is a necessary step.
All right, here's another negative, you guys. I got this thing ready. Like, I thought I was done, getting excited, gonna try it out. And I pushed this in under here. Let me switch my camera. And that side is in place. This side is off. And the only thing I can think of is that these brackets need to be flipped around, but in the instructions, tell me that I'm looking at this wrong. Sorry, there's a glare. It has those fins inward. The fins on this piece inward, like they are now. So I'm gonna try to flip those around, which should push that in. And even if you just look at it, it looks like it's angled slightly like this, so I hope that helps. Make sure that this is the way you attach these bottom plates, with the fins facing out, not in, despite what the instructions say. This bracket still goes on the outside. Bolts go from the inside to the out. Now, I also fastened those bolts tight all the way. I left them loose so you could pivot this to kind of match this drum. However, I don't know why, but it's completely oversized, like by design, I guess. So there's like overhang here. So as long as you're close, you can tighten those all down. Anyways, here I'm in, and here I'm in. So when I lift this up, we're catching both and locking it into place. Up next, it's going to be hard to show this on video, but we have our mounting plate. Get these started because apparently there's like a keyhole slot on the actual switch box itself. Up here's my switch box. I need to open that up. There's a couple screws holding the cap on. Lift it up, and then you're going to slide the switch box onto here. It'll kind of drop into place. Tighten those down. And then there's two more Phillips screwdrivers that are, or screws that are going to go here and here that will go in. You'll go inside of the box and screw them down into the back of this plate. And then you can put the lid of the box back together. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed, but going to remove that. All right, we got this open. Now inside, there should be a couple spots for those screws to go into the plate that we got over here. Okay, all those are attached to this plate. Close this again, add your screw, and then I gotta go to the other side because this is where this is gonna mount to. All right, here's that mounting bracket threaded. This plate just goes right here and here with those bolts. Motor is installed. Lastly, mine came with two options. If you have 6-inch dust collection pipe, or this one has the double 4-inch. I have 4-inch right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. There are 3 little holes that coordinate with these tiny little holes, and you're just going to do a sheet metal screw. It's gonna come with 3 big bags and 3 little bags. The little bags are for this filter canister thing. Like when you clean this, you can hear those flappers. They clean out those grooves, all the fine dust falls down there. The big dust goes into the big drum here. This is another negative. You've got this amazing setup, right, where you can avoid using bags and clamps. And then you got the same old crappy bag style clamp setup here. If this was like some sort of cubby, this would be incredible, right? But you still got to fight this clamp on this bag. All right, guys, I got it all assembled. The only thing I don't have is the correct plug to test it out. And this video has gotten to be much longer than I anticipated. So there's going to be a part 2, and that part I'm going to actually put it to use and review it, how it actually functions. This is just going to be an assembly video. I'm going to wrap things up with some negatives and some positives without even having it on yet. Just my initial thoughts, I guess, if you will. And I'll start with the negatives. The number one negative for this is the instructions. They're very poor. When you spend literally thousands of dollars, you would assume at the very least you would have like a very thorough and good instruction manual. The instructions I got were for a completely different unit than this, something similar but not the same one, and that's just unacceptable in my opinion. Next is all of the hardware on this makes me a little concerned, and I'll elaborate on that. I didn't count them, but I bet you there was 100 bolts holding this all together. And what do you think happens to all these nuts and bolts when the machine is running and vibrating constantly? I imagine they're going to work themselves loose, and if and when that happens, it's going to be a nightmare getting everything put back together. So I'm a little bit concerned with that. I feel like very easily this could have been simplified by making these solid parts. This section here could have been all one part. You don't have to worry about these seams, which are completely dependent on that cheap foam tape. That's another negative I would say. It just doesn't seem like that is the best option for something that I would consider a high-end price point of this Laguna. After shipping and handling, I'm near $3,000 invested in this tool. So when I spend my hard-earned dollar, I just expect a little bit more out of it. The other thing was this took a lot of time, and it's definitely a two-person job. And it does say that in the manual, so be prepared for that. I don't know if you could really consider that a negative or not, but if you're trying to run a business, you're gonna have to pay somebody to spend. It took me around 10 hours total to assemble this. I think with some good instructions, I hope with this video you're able to assemble it much quicker. A lot of that time was going back and forth from the manual and having to tear down parts that I had already assembled incorrectly because I just wasn't real clear on how to put it all together. But yeah, set aside a good amount of time for the assembly. Now let's talk about the positives and why I bought this. Cosmetic, totally cosmetic. I think the color, the stealthy look of the black and gray looks really sharp. And when you compare it to my old girl, the Jet, it's definitely eye appealing. The next, and the reason that I bought this was this mechanism right here. The ability for me to take this, roll it right outside my door, that's where I burn all of my sawdust. It's got handles and I can just empty it out, roll it back in here, and be off to the races again. That was the selling point for me on this unit, and I'm really excited for that. The only thing I'm concerned about is that we needed silicone to seal that all up, and that kind of falls in that same category as the foam tape and having everything as separate components. It doesn't feel as well built as I would like it to be. Time will tell. Review video number 2, we're going to put it through its paces and we'll see if it all holds up well. I really, really hope that it does. So those are kind of the positives right out of the gate. It's a 2 horsepower unit, which is the equivalent to what I had. It's got 2 ports instead of 1, so that's an upgrade as well. Another negative, and I talked about this earlier, I wish that instead of a bag back here, they had some sort of a cubby mechanism like this one. From what I understand, I've never had a unit like this with a separator. This doesn't fill up real quick, so it's not like you're going to be emptying this out every single day. But just the whole concept of having to get that band around and then slide the bag up, it's tricky. Can it be done? Yes, of course. My old one was that way. But when you compare it to this is like not so much fun anymore. So having some sort of a cubby system here would have been like a huge boost to me in the ratings. But I'm gonna wrap it up with that. I hope that you were able to assemble this a little bit easier with the help of this video. That's why I make them. Thanks a ton for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in your assembly process. It was a lot of work. Find somebody to help you out, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about this unit. I'm supposed to be getting that plug later this week, and then I've got a lot of work to do here, so I'm going to put it straight to work. Thanks again for watching. We will see you on the next build.